Hello, hello. Is everyone awake? Because I'm not. I'm super jet lagged, and for me, it's 10 p.m. or later right now, so I'm basically falling asleep because I've been awake since 3 a.m. But we're going to talk about tooling, just a little bit of checkout. Who's doing front-end development, as in like HTML and CSS without JavaScript, so to say? Okay, cool. Cool. Okay, so you might have seen me in the morning opening the conferences, and I didn't really introduce myself because I don't really like to do so, but I'm Karolina. I came from Poland. I work at a digital consultancy called And Yet. And you might have heard about us because of Lyft Security, Talkie, which is a WebRTC-based alternative to Hangouts, or &JS. So we're here to talk about tooling. And if you think about tools in general without the software context, first tools are dated 3 million years ago, which, if you think about it objectively, it's a lot of history. And since I really like definitions, let's define what a tool is. So a tool is usually a physical item that can be used to achieve a certain goal. And I think that in our software engineering context, it's a process or procedure that is serving a specific purpose. So when we think about the world we are living in right now in the context of software engineering, we are living in a superabundance of tools, and they are bound to make our lives easier and tasks completed faster. But is that really always the case? How do we determine which ones are good for us? How do we determine which ones are making us more productive and which aren't? We have so many options for frameworks, so many options for tools, so many technologies that are appearing every single day, and frameworks that are appearing on GitHub. I feel like a lot of people are assigning empowerment to the choice of our tools. Bless you. But it's not the tool that actually makes us a great developer or a great designer, but our skill. And I really love this quote from Paul Jarvis from his book, The Good Creative. If a carpenter loses his nail gun and has to use a hammer, he doesn't become less skilled. A programmer doesn't forget how to code if she switches computers or even programming applications. A writer's stories are no less valid because he changed from black to blue ink. Creatives aren't good at their art because of their tools. Their talent stems from the skills and knowledge they've acquired while using their tools. So of course, when we think about tooling, they are very helpful, and there's a decent amount of influence over our speed of work and the quality of our operations. But still, the question remains: how do we find which ones are very helpful for us and which can bring potential harm? So I wanna shift our gears a little bit and talk about simplicity, because when we are trying to define this subjectively right toolkit for ourselves and our teams, I think it's very important to think about simplicity and complexity as well. And simplicity keeps appearing in discussions about design and software and engineering. But what is simplicity? What does it even mean? I think that a lot of people are not understanding simplicity right. And they don't pay attention to the fact that simplicity is kind of misleading. Why? Because there are two types of simplicity. One of which is visual. So it's me looking at things and determining whether this tool is kind of simple to use, but not really using it. So kind of looking, oh, okay, this looks simple, but it's not necessarily very simple. And operational, so when we actually try to use something and we know for a fact whether it's simple or not. So when we're trying to define simplicity, we could kind of say that simplicity equals sanity. And especially when thinking about technology, at the end of the day, technology is supposed to be helping us in any way possible. But on the other hand, when you think about the amount of tooling and information that's available for us every single day online, it kind of makes us uncomfortably full in a way. So we live in a superabundance of information, and the most crucial skill is not multitasking, as it is advertised usually, but single-threading our attention. So we said that simplicity appears in discussions about software and design as well quite often. But this cry for simplicity is kind of superficial. And the cry for simplicity misses the point. Why? Because we want simplicity, but we don't really have a deeper understanding what simplicity means. And we think that by default, if we simplify things, it will make stuff easier. Our life will be easier. We won't be confused anymore. Our problems will be solved. And we'll get rid of all our possible frustrations that we might have. But we fail to notice that complexity is necessary and is an essential ingredient for our rich and eventful lives, talking about software or just in general. Complexity is a fact of the world, simplicity is in the mind. So we want to be more capable, we want to be more empowered by devices and by hardware, by tooling, but we fail to understand that simplicity correlates to complexity and they live together at the same level. So we define simplicity, but we haven't defined complexity yet. Complexity can be defined by determining how much time it takes to learn a certain item or how much time it takes to complete an action. So basically, complexity resides in our understanding of how things work. Because humans create conceptual mental models of how physical objects operate. And when we think about complexity, we tend to forget that we accept complex solutions in our lives every single day, all the time. We are just not paying attention to that. So complexity is a constant. And when we think about software, when we decrease user-facing complexity, it always arises somewhere on the back end, which is why I'm bringing up Tesler's law of conservation of simplicity. Every application has an inherent amount of irreducible complexity. The only question is who will have to deal with it, you as a developer or the user. So tools are bound to save time. That's what we want. And savings in time feel like simplicity, which is why, in my opinion, technologies like Node are very appealing because everything is fast. That makes me save time, so I can use that time for something else. So there's an implicit benefit in good tooling because we can use that time for something else. So we jump through simplicity and complexity as well. So let's shift our gears from the super abstract talk to something more tangible related to the front-end background where I'm coming from. So when we think about front-end systems, we think SAS, LESS, stylus, and preprocessors, and post-processors, templating engines like Jade or Ham, depending on whether you're working in Node or in Ruby, whatever else. But when we think about those technologies, we are forced to watch files and run tasks and builds. And in most cases, we are also forced to run performance-related tasks such as minification, concatenation, image optimization. So we have a lot of processes that we have to manage, which is when automation comes up. I really like this quote from Rachel Andrew. It may be due to my being old, but as I look at the modern CSS toolchain, I feel like we are very good at making simple things complicated. And Jeffrey Zeldman replies, "You're not old, you're wise." I think it's worrisome when things become so abstracted and so reliant on tools that the core language isn't properly used and understood. And I think that's a very valid concern, but still I think there are some basic tools that might be very helpful for all of us, but definitely we need some sanity to determine which ones are bringing us more gain and more harm. So that being said, we need to automate tasks to stay productive and focus on problem solving that cannot be delegated, because that's what we should be doing as humans. solving problems, and the computation part or optimization part should be just run by machines. That's what they're here for. So I want to talk about some very basic tools that should be used in the front end, maybe not by every single one of you, and maybe you know most of them. But I feel like it's important to mention them. First of all, prefixing. Most of you probably are using CSS preprocessors, so how do I not worry about vendor prefixing? Well, I don't want to go and check for every single rule that I'm writing and see whether, well, this spec was already implemented or do I have to use vendor prefixes. So, so using auto prefixer basically makes us not worry about vendor prefixes. Why? Because it checks caniuse.com, which is, in my opinion, the best resource for vendor prefixes and the stability of features, and it automatically applies necessary prefixes based on can I use data. If you're interested of any of those tools, the first part is actually the name of the GitHub user, and the other part is the name of the repo. So it's kind of like a shortened GitHub link. After prefixing, another thing that we could do is CSS linting, which is especially helpful when you're maybe trying to introduce new people to your code base and you're trying to enforce rules without, I don't know, maybe reviewing the code every single time that someone is commenting. CSS lint was written by Nicole Sullivan and Nicole Zakas, and it checks for bad patterns and possible markup errors. For me, linters are kind of a little bit a thing that it's not necessarily something that every single person should use, because I feel like they're a little bit opinionated. So they're a good thing, but if you optimize them for your own set of rules that you want to be enforcing. And then media optimizations that we already mentioned, we should be optimizing our media for delivery on so many devices. So Image Optim, which probably has the best algorithms available. SVG OMG, written by Jake Arkable, is an awesome UI that also works offline based on SVGO. And Adi Osmani wrote an awesome command line tool called TMI that will basically run and notify you whether there are any images that you could be possibly optimizing more. And then students, we are talking about sorting unnecessary bytes and minification, which also minify our CSS. There are so many options out there. I think my favorite are Clean CSS and Node CSS Min, because I work in Node environments, but there are many more available, so you can find whatever that suits your stack and your preferences. And since we are still on the topic of reducing the amount of unnecessary data, there are two other tools that might or might not be very useful: UnCSS and Helium CSS. These are not super straightforward to use because they require some amount of customizations. Basically, they clean up style sheets based on querying the DOM for selectors and checking against the style sheet. So it's actually quite time-consuming to set up. So, again, it might be very helpful if you're using very big CSS frameworks and you want to get rid of unnecessary code and have a very small CSS file. And since we mentioned all those tools that kind of lead to better performance, we want to test that performance. And while all of those tools were mostly command line tools, those tools that I'm mentioning are perfmap and stress CSS. Perfmap is something that you just install as a Chrome bookmarklet, and it will show you a visual map of elements performance, so you can very easily determine which ones are not performing very well. And stress CSS, that will check which classes are badly affecting your performance, which is also not a command line tool, so it's something that you just kind of write like a Chrome extension. I'm not sure if there are extensions for Firefox as well. And testing performance in Yslow, Chrome Developer Tools Audit, Google PageSpeed is another thing, but that's kind of not a part of command line tool chain that you're setting up for builds. And one of my absolute favorite tools that was written by Adam Morse, Pesticide.io, which does the simplest thing of outlining all the DOM elements, and that's all it does, but it makes debugging layout issues so easy, and it's especially helpful for people who are not very comfortable with CSS yet and with layout, because it makes it very obvious what's wrong in it and how to fix that. And for those of you that are not very comfortable with command line, but I would assume that most of you are. But if you're not, there are so many UI-based applications that will help you with concatenation and with minification and basic build running. Hammer Format, CodeKit, and Live Reload are possibly the most popular ones. Okay, so we rushed over some basic tools for the front-end architectures. But how do we actually add those tools to our process? When do we run those tasks? Do we like just go to the terminal and type like run build whatever? No, that's not what we want to do because we are still wasting time. For me, one of the most straightforward ways to run automation scripts is using NPM. And I feel like a lot of people who are working mostly in the front end, less with JavaScript, are not aware of that. But NPM is pretty darn powerful. So you can run scripts with NPM from package.json. You basically have a native ecosystem for task automation at hand when using NPM and just defining stuff in package.json. And I've heard from a lot of people that NPM is something that's for backend developers. So I'm a front-end person, so I shouldn't be touching that. It's so scary, but it's not. People who are working at NPM are very keen on improving stuff for front-end people and making it a package manager for everything, not only in JavaScript, but also for managing front-end resources. And even quoting their blog posts about front-end packaging. And the current support in NPM for front-end packaging is not good. And NPM loves you front-enders, and we care about your use cases, which is like the most awesome thing to say, probably. And a very simple example of running NPM scripts is just defining those scripts in package.json and having NPM start. That's actually an example from LevelDB website, which is open source on GitHub, so you can go and see it, and I will share a link in a second. So all of those 3 lines do is just compile Jade, compile stylus, and run a server in the meantime. That's all it does, and it's 3 lines of code. And maybe it doesn't do media optimization or file concatenation, but it does the very basic things. So for small projects, that's great. So you can use NPM scripts, and you can pipe the output from one task to another. You can run a command after previous task is completed, and you can run tasks concurrently, which is pretty awesome and pretty powerful in my opinion. So if you want to see that example, which is, of course, a little bit longer than that snippet, go to bit.ly LevelDB example and read awesome Substack article, NPM Task Automation, that explains it really in a really clear and concise way. Okay, so that's a native to node environment way of running those tasks. But there are 2 other tools that are very popular, which is GULP and GRUNT. And they're both alternatives to make, and they rely on not only defining dependencies in package.json, but also having a recipe file, which is called GRUNT file and GULP file, respectively. They both have awesome communities surrounding them. There's, of course, an ongoing discussion whether GULP is better or GRUNT is better. In my opinion, they're just different, and they serve kind of the same purpose, but they have a little bit different architectures. GULP is maybe a little bit more straightforward for people who are working with Node because it's based on streams, and I think it aligns with Node way of doing things. And GRUNT is a little bit more verbose in terms of setup. Files are a little bit bigger and need to write a little bit more code. And there are some people who are saying, oh, GRUNT, like it's kind of an overkill, it's trying to do more than it should. But again, I think it's a preferential choice in terms of a platform you're willing to choose. Simple GULP file for a task or of JS hinting it's just so easy to use. So we said npm, grunt, gulp, but there is something that we are forgetting about, which is make. And for some people, make is like ancient technology that we shouldn't be using anymore, or it's just so scary. Oh my God, make is so complicated. But I'm a front-end person, and I'm not writing a lot of JavaScript, and I think make is actually pretty empowering. But the reason being, at Onion, we have a custom setup for running our building and automation tasks for the front end, which is we have a custom module that was written by Philip Roberts that is called Building Static Server, and that is paired with make. So the way that works is Building Static Server is running a server, so and make is doing the build part. The reason why we're not using make on its own, which is of course possible, is because make is not really great at running long processes. And building static servers, making sure that builds are run at the appropriate time, that you don't see cached styles, you don't see outdated information, basically. And this is most of our make file, which looks pretty straightforward, even for a person that haven't been using make or haven't seen a make file. It just builds CSS from stylus. Of course, that's our own preference, and that's what works for our architecture with Node. But that's another option that people forget about because they're like, oh, there's GRUNT and GULP, so I will just use that. But there are simpler solutions than that. And that's a link for building static server that is, of course, open source. And you can look around and see if maybe you would like to be inspired by it, or maybe you would like to use it to solve your own automation processes. So the question that appears now is, when do I actually run those tasks? Like, when do I concatenate files? When do I minify files? Well, I've learned from collaborating and being in a team that it's kind of disempowering to be running builds and, well, maybe not builds, but minification locally and then committing those files to GitHub. The reason being is I collaborate with a lot of marketing people, with people who are not necessarily super front-end or back-end savvy, and the workflow of committing minified files to the repo basically assumes that someone has to be able to run a build. And what if that person is using only GitHub's UI? What if they don't have everything set up on their laptop? Like, they can't contribute anymore because you're making an assumption that they have to run a build because you have to run a build every single time you change something. Another reason to not be commenting minified files is because, of course, conflicts. I mean, for people who are savvy with Git and version control, it's not a biggie, like conflicts, whatever. I don't even care. But for people who are not, it's again pretty disempowering, which is why we never commit those files to our repos, and that's something that's completely delegated to people who are doing DevOps, and it's not even a concern for usual developers and people who are contributing to the projects. So we rushed over tools, we rushed over how to bundle up those tools, when to run those tasks. But I think right now we're getting at the most important part of all of that and the whole idea behind this talk, which is collaboration. Because what we want to do with those tools is empower ourselves and the members of our team, or being at work or open source project or whatever, to build things better and faster. So one of the key ingredients of teamwork is getting rid of our personal preferences and stop fighting over them, and getting rid of an ego as well, and try to figure out something that's good for everyone. That often means negotiation, that often means not using your favorite tools, but it really creates true space for collaboration to happen. Technology is a mean to an end, but it will fail miserably if people can work together, feel empowered, and contribute to grow. If we think about it, every single person that's hired or joins an open source project, they have their own preferences. They have their own set of biases and predispositions. And collaboration happens only when those preferences that are mine or whoever else's won't cloud our sane judgment about what's the best for the team. So the good of the team is way more important than kind of like individual preference. Knowledge makes everything simpler. When you talk about process, or if you mention formality or documentation, most of people get really sad or really angry because we hate process and we hate docs and we don't really want to deal with that. But when you're gradually inviting more and more people, especially to open source projects, you start to value the importance of good documentation. And it is crucial in general in software and also in creating and implementing automation as well. Because if you think about it, let's say we have a small team of 15 people, and you're a person that created this process for, I don't know, let's say optimizing CSS, but you didn't really pay attention to writing docs, so now you have to explain this process to every single person on this 15 people. And let's say it takes 30 minutes per person, so that basically ruins your day. And again, thinking about being empowering and working in an environment that's not necessarily consisting of only front-end people or back-end people, but also people who are only working on content or people who are maybe more marketing-alike. For them, documentation is essential. And I know that sometimes means like run install node from Node.js website, then run, I don't know, install npm, then install that thing, and then run this in your terminal, and then get back to your browser. And it seems a little bit silly, but it is very empowering for every single person that will be potentially contributing to your repository. Another thing that it's also kind of associated with Node as a Node philosophy, but it's actually Unix philosophy, but that doesn't matter, is breaking down data in modules, which makes it more digestible and more controllable. People mostly tend to do it in the backend, at least I've noticed that, but it's also really important to do that in the front end with CSS. Why? Because modularity provides that basically ensures that it's way more digestible and it's easier to find things, it's easier to remove stuff, and it makes things simpler because smaller things appear simpler. And we often hear about people going like, oh my god, this crazy monadic library, or this project is so big, I just hate working on it. And the reason might be, okay, the project is just really bad and the code is bad, but it might be just bad structure. So having a really good organization might sound a little bit pedantic, but it brings a lot of value to collaboration as well. And since we were talking mostly about command line tooling, I think it's very important that good tools, especially the command line based, don't fail or succeed silently. And I know it might seem a little bit straightforward, it's something that is very obvious, but I've seen many tools that will give you an error, but won't give you a message about succeeding with the process, whatever they were doing, which is, again, very disempowering for people who are not very super command line savvy, because they don't know what happened, and they don't know how to find out whether something succeeded or not. So having an option of having communication from a tool, if you're writing command line tools, of having both success and failure, and having that be very audible, it's a very important option, and you can always silence it in a way. The aim to build bulletproof software is profound, but almost impossible to achieve. And I think it's really hard to come to terms with that, because probably most of you are perfectionists, and we kind of don't want to acknowledge that progress along with complexity is another constant. So we kind of try to over-engineer our solutions without having in mind that aspect of collaboration. So it's relatively easy to build overcomplicated solutions, but it's hard to maintain them. Often one can sit down and be like, okay, I have this amazing idea for this tool, and I'm going to write it in such a beautiful way that everyone on GitHub will love it, and I'll get so many stars. But that's not really collaboration. That's not really something that's empowering at all. There's a lot of pressure on writing smart, so to say, code, but what's very important at the end of the day is something that just gets the job done. And you don't have to even certainly be the person who is writing it. There are so many tools that are available. Maybe there's something that's already doing that for you. So the most sophisticated way is not necessarily something that would be good and understandable for your team at all. So it's easy to introduce unnecessary complexity by adding tools that manage other tools. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because since we talked a lot about tooling and a little bit about package management with NPM, especially in the front end, there's a lot of confusion surrounding package management. It's like, should we use NPM, but NPM is for JavaScript? Or should we use Bower? Or should we use that other thing? And I've seen a lot of front-end developers who are confused. They're not sure where to put their modules or where to, which one to use. So it's very confusing for them. And that yeah, so brew install python is install pip, install bower, install minus g fuck you, and fuck you is actual module, so it's not me being mean. And it's a quote from Lewis Cooper, who said that to me when we were discussing package management. So there are a lot of package managers for probably every single programming language there is, and it's very easy to introduce complexity with those package managers tools, because why would I use Bower? Should I use NPM? Which one is native for us? But the point being is we have to remember which tool is being helpful for us, which tool is empowering for our team, how many dependencies is going to bring, and is it going to bring us technical debt or some technical advancements? The right set of tools or a lack thereof sets apart a craftsman from an operator. So I think that in this super brief rushing about tooling for front-end and package management and running tasks as well, what's important is that front-end technologies are advancing very fast, and there are so many tools available every single day that it's very tempting for us to try them all and add them all. But in those limitless possibilities, we tend to forget what's actually empowering and what's actually going to work well in our team scenario, and we just get excited about new stuff, so we try to add everything up just to try it out. So, wrapping up, I hope this is going to work. I have a video, and I know it looks like a shameless marketing plug, but it's not. I think that this will wrap up the roundabout collaboration in how to build empowering front-end systems and how to, I guess, be a better human being. We'll see.
And yet is high fives and hugs and collaboration.
And yet is where people come to do what they love every single day.
And yet is a group of creative people who are set out on making not only the web, but the world a better place.
And yet is about building trust in people working in their passion.
And yet is a collection of people, a club really, where we get to do things that we enjoy doing.
And yet is a place where we can fail, where we can grow, where we can be challenged, and we can celebrate each other's successes.
Amjet is a place where we get paid to do the work that we probably willingly do for free.
And yet, to me, is the trust and freedom to build something amazing.
And Yet is a software company with the goal of making the world a better place, one person at a time.
The only way that you can define it yet is by what people are doing. And what everybody does is so diverse that it's hard to come to a singular conclusion.
And yet is a place to be supported and trusted without exception.
What is it, and yet?
And yet is a place where a bunch of people are together trying to grow together as people.
Can I go? Can I seriously?
Now you can go.
Thank you. Get this thing off me.
Amjet is a place where unicorns go to play together.
I got nothing.
Alright, you ready? Okay.
Okay. Oh, you're ready.
So anyhow, that was a shameless plug, but I think that defines collaboration pretty well. So apart from some tools that I've mentioned that you might have heard or might not have heard about, I think that would be a pretty good wrap up for you to remember when choosing technologies and when trying to work together, where being it open source or at your job. So thank you.